Well, South Africa says it wants reports that Britain spied on G20 delegates during meetings in London. They want those reports investigated. The Department of International Relations and Cooperation says government has noted with concern these reports, which were published by Britain's Guardian newspaper. Let's talk a little bit about what are the likely implications. What is likely to happen then as a result of these reports? On the line now, I'm joined by Ambassador Tom Wheeler, a research associate at the South African Institute of International Affairs. I'm also on the other line, Professor Stephen Friedman. He's a political analyst and director of the Center for the Study of Democracy at Rhodes University and the University of Johannesburg.
Not really, Kolani, which is a great pity because things should come out of it. It should really make us reflect as South Africans. I mean, the British have a lot of reflecting to do, but that's their problem. It should make us reflect on what this is really about, which is the constant abuse by most states of intelligence services. I mean, some people will say that what the British government, what the British intelligence agencies seem to have done in this case is absolutely routine and normal and happens all the time, and they would be absolutely correct. But the fact that something is routine and normal and happens all the time doesn't mean that it's right. Constantly eavesdropping on people, collecting intelligence in this way. The really interesting question to me is what do countries actually gain when they do this sort of thing? What is achieved? Would Britain have done worse at the G20 if it hadn't have done this? The answer is probably no. And the reason that ought to make us reflect is that states all over the world, including our own and particularly Britain, like us, ought to believe that these intelligence services are actually looking after us, protecting us from all sorts of bad things. And most of the time, all they're trying to do is protect themselves from the glare of publicity. If you looked at Prime Minister David Cameron's response to these particular allegations, his initial response immediately was to say, I don't talk about security and intelligence matters. And that sounds terribly grown up and adult, and he's looking after the interests of the British people. But actually what it in effect means that, if my intelligence agents were wasting everybody's time by spying on people for no apparent reason, I don't have to tell you about it because it's an intelligence matter. And this is very interesting in the South African context because at the moment, we've been sold a bill of goods by various sections of the media and the NGOs, and we're being told that the Protection of State Information Bill is actually about covering up government corruption, which it isn't. It's actually about protecting the intelligence services. And really incidents like this give us cause to pause. Should we be allowing intelligence services, whether they're British or South African or anything else, to do things without us knowing about it? Because these incidents tend to show that if we do that, they'll end up infringing our rights rather than protecting them.
Let me tell you three examples, one in the United States, one in London, and one locally. When I was stationed in Washington in the embassy there, a senior official came to the embassy and gave us certain information. And he said to us, do not send this in the form of a telegram. Send it, by word of mouth, or not by telephone, of course, or face-to-face, because, and the implication was that the National Security Agency in the United States would break our codes and then would know what he had done. Now, this was something, it was not, undermining the U.S. interest. It was actually to promote a process that was happening at that time. When I was in London some years earlier, a British diplomat said to me, it would be very helpful if we knew what South Africa intends to do so that we can Well, what he was asking me to do was to give him classified information. Another one was, the South African one was, at one stage we were invited by the intelligence services to give key words for their interception of other people's messages by, satellite communication. And I was working with the UN at that stage, so I gave them things like human rights, UN, and of course, we got a lot of garbage. We got, for instance, the liquor order for the UN mission in Maputo. But this is the sort of stuff that came out of this. So, there's an enormous amount of information that is trawled in these various ways by the intelligence services, and just the only way of dealing with it is through this keyword approach. And the human capital that can be invested to go through what comes out of that must be enormous. So, the big countries obviously have more ability to make use of this effectively than not. Whether what they get in the end is very useful, but at the same time, when you send an email, be careful you don't use the word terrorist or coup or bomb or that sort of thing, because that will immediately highlight your message and put you under some sort of suspicion. Well, it's marginally. I mean, perhaps the most interesting point around that time was that the Polokwane conference is taking place, and there was a bit of uncertainty about where South Africa was going after post-Polokwane and so on. So that's perhaps what was behind it, because I don't think that South Africa's position at the G8, the G20 was particularly secretive. That Thabo Mbeki was working for the interests of Africa, and there were a lot of African delegations at some of these meetings and so on. So, I think it was a bit of a futile effort, and it sort of causes more sensation because it's become known than what it really meant in practice.
See, if you think that it's okay that your government is doing what Snowden and Manning and others have revealed that they're doing, that's your right to say. But as a citizen, you have a right to know. I think that the fact that Manning is on trial in the U.S., that Snowden is in hiding, is really a symptom of the fact that we don't recognize the importance in democracies of knowing what is going on.